Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Weirdly Magical podcast. This episode is for the Aries full moon that is on October the 13th at 10:07 p.m. London time, Universal Time. So it's on the 13th pretty much everywhere for us in the Northern Hemisphere. For some of you further east and in the Southern, it'll be on the 14th of October, but October the 13th it is for us. But we're more on that in a minute. First of all, we're going to introduce ourselves. So Jen, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I'm Jen Duchenne of jenduchenne.com, and I help guide my clients to embrace the truth of their soul and function in the world with lighter and more joyful energy. And I'm the creator of the Illuminating Journey Cards.
And we'll look at one of those in a minute. And I'm Louise Eddington. I am a soul astrologer and writer, and I help my clients to live in deep self-awareness and self-acceptance. I'm the writer of Modern Astrology, Harness the Stars to Discover Your Soul's True Purpose, which actually was released on Audible this morning. Woo! So if you like Audible books or you have Audible credits, go get it. There's not very many astrology books on Audible, I have to tell you.
That's amazing.
I'm very proud of that. I'm not the narrator, but that's fine. It's my words. Anyway, Jen, let's look at our cards.
Yes. Am I going first?
Yeah.
All right, so the card that I picked is the Soul Portal 23, and these cards were created in the Akashic Records or with the help and the guidance. So they're quite mystical and bringing ancient knowledge into the current energies, mixing with what's in the future. So this card, if you can't see it, is like a desert, I guess. It's got all this orange land with these mountains in the distance and some pyramids behind. There's a woman with a pheasant type of outfit on, like her face is masked, and there's the Sphinx as well as a pheasant and some crystals. There's also the Venus star code. Is that what it's called? Venus star code? No.
Where is that? Oh, can't tell what it is. It looked like a moon. But
All right.
Oh yeah, it is the Venus flower of
right, the Venus flower of journey flower. And so this card at this time tells me that we are entering a portal of ancient knowledge that we're modernizing. Like for us individually, we're being challenged to take a journey into the unknown and to reclaim the essence or the energies we have denied or pushed aside or lost. So it does feel like this is a very portentous time that we're being called to do what is required in order to liberate ourselves.
It's got is that an eagle on top of the pyramid?
Yes. There's an eagle on the top.
Yeah, I always think of the eagle as flying above and seeing the bigger picture, and of course, you know, the pyramids and the Sphinx is very ancient knowledge and ancient awareness, and there's a lot of that being coming into my awareness, and I'm sure I'll talk about that throughout the call. Egyptian cosmology, talking from an astrological point of view, is very ancient, and we can learn a lot from it. So it's been coming up for a lot for me that we have to explore the ancient knowledge to bring it in a new way. I've talked about it in the past, but just over the last few days, it's been really in my awareness again.
Right. And that's kind of the basis of these cards, and this is kind of like the gateway to all of that. So it's these cards is the meaning behind these cards is to act as translators or a form of the Akashic record. So it's kind of fascinating, and of course, people who are looking at I know there's a bit of a glare, but you might see something. I also find the colors very interesting. There's kind of yellow, kind of orange, like light orange, yellows, and then those blues, the deeper kind of gray blues, and then the blues at the top. I find that really interesting. It definitely feels, like a composition of some kind. And then at the bottom, there are these kind of lotuses. You can see kind of stylized lotuses, kind of very...
I seriously suggest anybody who loves looking at these cards of Jen's, you see something new in them every time. So get yourself a deck if you want to explore them deeper. And I must say that's the reason I like the tarot cards I use, speaking of Egypt as well, because I pull cards from the Thoth tarot, and Thoth is an Egyptian deity, if you like, and I actually pulled the Princess of Wands for this, and this is the mastery of spontaneous expression and liberation, because this is a very fire and air full moon, and of course Egypt's the desert as well, so it's very fiery and things like that as well. And I always think of fire and air as very spontaneous creativity. So this card, you can just see how abandoned this figure is in the creative flow. And there's a lot to do with that in this full moon, I must say. So
right. And I just want to hold them up together so we get kind of a sense of what's happening, because there definitely is some kind of relationship. And I find it very interesting, the figure kind of flying up into the flame, right? That card. It is, as you say, that sense of total joy, like this is who I am when I express myself, which is
with the magic wand too. I love
right, which is amazing. And that's the essence of this year, is being kind of called to express that flamboyant energy of self, as opposed to the way we've done it, which is, oh, I can just show little pieces of myself that are acceptable. Yeah, a little weird, but it's acceptable. And it's like, no, I'm just kind of busting through all of that. And I feel like
I love that she's got the tiger by the tail too, and things.
Yes,
kind of just
totally right.
Yeah,
with the lamp, kind of like the lamp, and all of that kind of feeling of going up and discovering new things. And there's definitely a similar energy here, because we can either be,
especially in the woman's dress, I think.
Right, exactly. Similar colors, the yellows, and
a bit flame-like, a bit phoenix.
Yes, right.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, right. Very much the energy of, sorry.
I hope the cards are kind of inspiring people to how this full moon feels before we even dive into the numbers and things, because to my mind, it's a really creative and transformative full moon. So just to talk a little bit about the details, I didn't do the full introduction to the podcast that we normally do. So I will just mention we don't have any questions for this podcast, but if you have any questions, please send them to weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com, and your question may be featured on an episode. And we have a Patreon as well, Weirdly Magical Podcast on Patreon. But I'd rather dive into this, because Jen and I have both got crazy lives right now. So we're going to get on and get the recording, get it out there. You're getting this one nice and early, because we're actually recording it like 2.5 weeks before the full moon, because of both our travel schedules. So you've got lots of time to prepare for this deeply transformational, as I said, full moon. So the full moon is at 20 degrees and 13 minutes of Aries. That's the position of the moon. A full moon is always an opposition, and so the sun is at 20 degrees and 13 minutes of Libra. The moon is conjunct to Eris over there in Aries, only just over 3 degrees away from Eris, the goddess of discord. And we've got a whole conflagration of planets around the 20-degree mark, But most importantly, the full moon, the opposition between the moon and the sun, is almost exactly square to Pluto in Capricorn, which makes this a closing third quarter square for the sun going to Pluto, heading very fast, it feels like now, to the major conjunction of several planets on January the 12th, 2020 at 22 degrees of Capricorn. The sun will be there, Pluto will be there, Saturn will be there, Ceres will be there, Jupiter will be not far behind. We'll talk about all of that. And it does hark back to April as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. But for now, let's dive into the numbers, and then all the rest will start to, and we'll talk about the rest as we go through.
Right. It's very exciting. All the messages we're getting, not just planetary, but numerically for all of this. So what's so fascinating to me is that this is happening on the 13th. And since we're in a 12 universal year and October has a 1, we're actually in a 13 months. Now, I know we talked about the 13 last week, whenever, but 13 is the number of death in the sense of rebirth. So whatever we've been hanging on to, or whatever we've been wanting to stay that needs to go, is going to die. 13 is, we've talked about the divine feminine number, the number of transformation. And of course, Pluto is all about transformation. So we know this is one of those moments where many things that have been kind of waiting to kind of explode or be released is now going to be rising. So we won't be able to stop the tide of change because it's sudden, unexpected. And of course, 13 is about us not only connecting to our individual selves, but also to the joy, the exuberance like we were talking about in the card, right? In kind of in both the cards is a sense of exuberance or new beginning. I'm getting started, which kind of ties us into the Aries, the flame, the energy of rebirthing, a revolution or reincarnation or renaissance. These are all words that are about the revolution of change inside of us, a rebirthing of who we are. So we know that ready or not, we are going to be born again in some way. It sounds weird, like it's a religious thing, but it isn't. It's not a religious thing. This is a soul reclamation time. So we get to reclaim our souls, or we get to continue letting our personal energy be used in laboratories for others. So very exciting. And then, of course, I wanted to just touch on the fact that 13 is a 4, and 4 is about grounding into a new idea, creating, this is an earthing number. We're earthing new ideas into the earth and into our world and into the way we are activated, and that's a 4. So the year 2020, which this map is pointing us to with all the 2s, also indicates the 2 + 2, 2020. It's 2 4s, and we know that the meeting number is 20. So it's that replay, 2, 4. Those are both numbers that are helping us manifest new things, bring new ideas into the world. So I think it's pretty interesting that Mercury is at 13 here, because it's through our minds that we will kind of change who we are, by accepting new ideas, by expanding our minds.
And of course, the minutes on the full moon are at 13.
Right.
So we're at 20 degrees. So we've got the 2 again, and then the 13 in the minutes.
Right. So isn't that fascinating? We're in a 13 month, we're on a 13 day, and we've got the 13s and the 2s and the 4s all kind of playing together, reminding us when we started, and Louise talked about the Aries moon. So when we started in April, which is kind of the new beginning of this year, right? This is what I need to clear and bring into being. This is what we were seeding then, of course, as part of the revolution. Something that we set in stone then is now coming to this incredible fruition where we will feel uplifted in some way, whether whether it's Noah's boat that's going up the water, right? Or like that image you were showing, that was it the princess of
the Princess of Wands.
of wands, right? And wands are all about our desire, really. It's about activating what we truly believe in. So those are my thoughts off the bat about the numerology, and I'll talk about whatever else comes through.
Well, I just wanted to hark back to, Jen mentioned it, April already. The new moon was on April the 5th, 2019. And this is the full moon from that new moon. But on April the 5th, on that new moon, we actually had a cardinal grand cross around the same degrees. The Saturn was at 20 degrees Capricorn, where Pluto is on this full moon. The nodes were at 22 degrees of Cancer and Capricorn, and the 22 is where we've got this big conjunction coming up in January. Pallas Athena back then was at 21 Libra and opposing Eris, who was at 23 Aries, who is back to 23 Aries on this full moon. So we've got all these patterns repeating. Pallas Athena has moved on a whole sign. She's now at 19, well, on the full moon, she will be at 19 degrees of Scorpio. And what's important about where she is, Pallas Athena, and where the sun is, and in fact, Mercury and Venus as well are heading that way. They're all in what's called a third quarter closing square, moving towards Pluto to start all these new cycles that are of rebirth and transformation that are happening in January. So when we say this is a full moon of transformation, it is, but it's a process, and it's the closing third quarter square of anything, like the lunar cycle, and any cycle of planets, is one of release. That third quarter is a time of what do we let go. And the phrase that's been coming to me over the last few days, as I've been looking at all the astrology for now and coming up, is burn it off, burn it off, burn it off. Because to go back to my card again, the very fiery Princess of Wands, there's an element of creation, but also of burn it off, so that you're burning off anything that keeps you from complete freedom and liberation and freedom of expression, personal expression. And there is actual, Jen and I both worked with somebody who did a lot of burning off exercises, and you can literally just get a candle and sit with the candle and like fan the heat of the flame to you to burn off what you no longer need, so that you can make space for real liberation and creative self-expression. So as I look at the new moon from April to now, where we are coming up on this full moon in October, and leading forward, I think through these third quarter squares going into January, I think it's important that we consciously choose to literally burn off what we no longer require, burn off old patterns, old ideas, old thoughts, some old relationships, perhaps, all kinds of things. Burn it off just seems a really relevant thing for this fire and air full moon as well. So,
Right, that's very true. So I would just talk about some things that came to mind while you were talking. First of all, I didn't mention before, but I think it's significant, is the fact that with the 13th month and the 13 day, we actually get the 17. So it's 13 plus 4, which is the 8. And whenever we have 4 and 8, we know there's fateful. This is destiny. These are things that are going to happen, big things that are leading us to something different. Longevity will be, or immortality will be activated again. And we know we've had these same numbers coming back over and over again. So this is how we have actually grown is because we're being exposed to things over and over again that are different, and we're getting more used to it. Other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about April and the seeds or whatever, or new seeds, I suddenly got this picture of like a melon, and how inside the melon there are many seeds in the center, right? You see all those like orange kind of seeds, but not every seed is planted. And so that's kind of what I'm getting, is to remember that you may have had a lot of ideas, and I know I did, and I have had, but what's happening to me is I'm getting much more focused on the ideas that resonate for me, and I'm getting clearer and happier to let go of some of those other things that still are good, but they're just not good for me at this time. Like, I don't want them. I just want them to go away because I've already decided where I'm going. For now,
brings me to that burn it off thing.
Right, exactly. That burn it off. Burn off even the seeds that you haven't used, because that creates fuel. And that fuel will help to move you into this new direction. There's one thing for sure that's very important right now. I'm certainly feeling it, and I know other people are. Our bodies have not been situated for all this new stuff that's coming in. So we are going to up level in some way. And the best way to do that is to get more in sync with your body, not less. So we tend to kind of go, oh, this body, I can't stand these things. We tend to dismiss the reality of our lives. And while I know there can be different realities in what we choose, it really is in the choosing of what we're focused on. Yes, this is my situation, so I can think of it that it sucks, or I can think that it has potential, just like a seed. So if I think that something has potential, how do I want to treat it? Just like a child. Do I want to treat a child like they don't know anything and they're useless? Or do I want to treat my child or whatever, this thing I'm birthing, as something amazing that maybe can lead me to new things I don't know about? Or just having the right attitude around it can just help, right? So I think burning off, but also realizing that as you're burning it off, which is so powerful, you are creating this juice to go forward. So,
exactly.
Right? You're not wasting it. It's all fueling this incredible journey. It's like jet fuel.
Well, you're burning off resistance as well to the change, so that you can focus and really like zoom forward in this creative space. Because, if you think about wildfires, yes, they can be really destructive and things, but there's always new comes up from those wildfires. In nature, wildfire is nature's way of stimulating new growth, to be honest. So yes, it's very destructive to humans at times, but if you just look at a wildfire out in the wild, it's nature's way of clearing the way for like the real green new growth. So
Right. I mean, they say in certain forests, like I think redwood trees, that if they don't have new fire, they will not seed new growth. And this is the same for me. This whole idea of fire is, in a sense, the 13. When the phoenix is burning, it's burning off the residue of all the soul print of who it's been. Like, oh, this is who I am, or your earth print. This is who I am. This is how I do things. This is how we do things. And it's like it's just burning it off. And it gives you like a new start. So you go, oh, that's all burnt off. What do I do now? Because I'm creating new growth. What am I growing? What am I feeding? So there's that whole cycle to think about in terms of reclamation or renewal, restoration. It's what are you restoring? And just what comes to mind, I know Louise and I talked about this briefly at one other time, I don't remember when we were talking about the fact that the last time that Pluto and Saturn met like this was in 15 something.
Yeah, can't remember the date now.
But that's when, what was his name? John... someone he pinned that reclamation on the church door. He was like Martin Luther.
Oh yeah.
Pinned that reclamation, like saying, we as people are taking back the idea of our belief system. Like, we're not going to just listen to people up in power telling us what we believe. We're actually reclaiming our right to worship or believe or do whatever it is we want to do. And we're a lot further. Like, at that time, that was a major breakthrough for people. So we've already gone through all that. So we know we're heading to this incredible opening or opportunity to reclaim ancient things we did, those freedoms we had, or maybe things we came here intending to have but never did have. We're reclaiming those. We're putting our notice to the door of the establishment and going, this is the way. And fire is the light. It's the way forward. It's I think we have to really think about the power of the fire and how it's helping us now.
And as we record this, we're actually recording on September the 24th. Yes. Okay. Pluto actually stations direct on October the 3rd. So by the time this full moon comes around, he will have been starting to move direct for 10 days. Saturn stationed direct on September the 18th. So these two will be starting to pick up speed. The speed of change and transformation is going to start picking up. Funnily enough, as we record this, apparently Nancy Pelosi is going to announce start of impeachment proceedings. Whether that'll come to anything, who knows? But with Capricorn being the institutions and establishment, things falling apart in the UK as well. Prorogation of Parliament was deemed by the courts to have been illegal this morning. That was announced in the news. So, all these things are being undermined and overturned, and it's going to speed up. And I don't want to stay on the politics side or the government side for too long, but it will. This is speeding up kind of the collapse of the patriarchal institutions that rule us, really, and the transformation of them. Interestingly, I had, you can read about it on my Medium if you like. I came across, this person sent me a friend request on Facebook. Turns out she's a Native American author. I studied contemporary Native American literature when I was in college in England back in the day. She sent me one of her books. I read it in 2 days, which is unheard of because I haven't read a full book in months and months and months. And it was all about reclaiming the past, the ancient ways, learning, refinding your foundation and things like that. And that's so relevant to both the cards that we got and this energy. The bringing up of the ancient ways in Egypt. We're really being asked to learn from the past to bring it forward in this new way again. I don't know where that was going or where it started.
Right, no, but that totally makes sense. I mean, here we have proof from all different angles that new or the old is new again, in a sense, right? But the difference here is each of us is being given a role on taking responsibility and saying, I'm not just going to sit around and expect so-and-so to put this all together. I have to do my part because there are certain things I want going forward. So one thing to reclaim old things, and that is absolutely wonderful. Things that have died, things that still have value. We're not saying just pick up everything.
Oh, no. The wisdom is right. It's like, yeah.
Right. It's the discerning of what we want going forward, which means we have to actively do things, which is in all of the stuff and in the numbers, the 2, the 4, the 8. This is all about manifesting a different life right here on Earth. So we have a different experience. So for me, what's important about the political or any of that stuff is the governance that has ruled us for a long time. So we have been conditioned to look up to people like our teachers or our leaders and go, well, I'm just like a child in a sense, like I don't have any say. We always say things like that. Oh, there's nothing to do with me. I don't have any power over this. And we're just reinforcing the fact that here's some people who are just like us that woke up in some position and went like, oh, it's kind of like a bunch of kids going, with like little like men do those things with those kind of war figures, like move them around the table, chess pieces, right? It's just like chess pieces. Oh, I'm in the mood for everyone's going to drink milk for the rest of their lives every day, right? It doesn't matter. It could be anything. Like everyone has to have a vaccination or whatever. I know that's a funny, tricky subject there, but it's just random. We have to be more connected to what we're choosing to do instead of just going like a wave and getting all mad and responding. Just kind of sitting and saying, well, what is true for me? Is this something I want to do? And if it's something I don't want to do, well, how can I have more impact and effect? Running around yelling, it's not always the best way to change things. Sometimes you have to do it, or sometimes there's certain people whose job it is to do that. But this is the picture. The power is within all of us, and that's what we have to do, right?
And that's what the Pluto is, really, squaring it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. My favorite Pluto expression for a Pluto transit or aspect to a lunation like this is Pluto takes away what you thought was your power and leaves you with what is truly your power. And then we have Jupiter in Sagittarius as well, also at 20 degrees. And he's gaining speed on this full moon as well to leave Sagittarius, his own sign, on December the 2nd, I think. But so he's only got a short time really left in Sagittarius, and he has been seeking truth, your personal truth and your personal kind of vision. And it's a fire again. It's that Princess of Wands again. It's that abandoned vision, liberation, because Sagittarius is all about freedom and liberation as well. So you're being asked to really kind of free yourself, free your mind, free your soul. This is nothing about the kind of freedom that is talked about in America all this time. It's not that kind of freedom. This is personal, real soul freedom to self-express. And by the way, if anybody wants to read the book that just so inspired me, it's called Sacred Wilderness by Susan Power. It's quite amazing. It's a beautiful book. Yeah.
I'm getting the chills. It must be good. I'll
So
read it.
Yeah,
I rarely read anymore, but
well, it's got me back to reading too. I'm like, no, I want to read more.
Well, it is kind of interesting. I have been doing some of what you were talking about, those audiobooks for a while. I stopped because I've been busy, but I'm going to get back into it. I think it's, if we want to have different thoughts, we have to enrich our mind. And that's part of this whole Sagittarius thing with Jupiter, reclaiming our thought about who we think we are. Because I've heard people talking about this, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about it too, but it's about what is truth. We're looking at this going, well, every one of us thinks that our truth is the truth, but in actual fact, they're just opinions. There is no real, except for universal truth.
Yeah.
Everything we're talking about is opinions, just like somebody who's in charge. This is my opinion that people should or shouldn't do this. And now we're going, well, if lots of us gather together and have a certain opinion or a range that fits into a certain place, that gives us more power than one person alone. And like Louise is saying, it's like when we understand what our true power is, then we understand what our responsibility is to that.
Exactly. Right. I do find it interesting that Eris is conjunct the moon on this full moon as well, though. And she's back to that 23 degrees, which is her number, according to Discord. Right. Yeah, and it's the card, the 23 as well. And the 23, I wrote about that way back in March, actually, I think, about how we have 23 sets of chromosomes, 23 digits in total, I think, in our body. Those 23 is a very human number anyway. It's and Eris is approaching. They're going to have 5 exact squares, Pluto and Eris. Everybody talked about the Uranus Pluto squares that we had from 2011 to 2014. I think there were the years of those that caused a lot of transformation and change. I think you haven't seen anything yet with the squares to Eris coming up, because the last time these two met, we had major aspects, because Eris is so slow moving. We didn't even know Eris existed. Of course she was there. She was always there. But as with all these discoveries, once they're discovered, their energy seems to impact us even more. She was discovered in 2005. And so these are the first major aspects between Pluto and Eris. And again, it's a closing quarter, because Pluto is moving faster than Eris and will be moving towards Eris. They don't meet until long after we're dead. But these 5 squares that are coming up in 2020 and 2021 are going to cause major shaking up of everything, governments, the way the world's run, absolutely everything. And I actually cannot find the article. I want to find again, but I'm writing an article for the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, and I will find it. But it was kind of more about the story of Eris, the myth. Most people know about her throwing the apple into the wedding and starting the Trojan War. But this went back further, and it occurred to my mind when I was reading it, that she was fighting against the patriarchy forming in the first place and taking control, and she lost the battle at first. And now she's back in since 2005, shaking it all up, and she's going to destroy the patriarchy. We're going to have a completely new, no, that doesn't mean we'll have a matriarchy. We're going to have a completely new way of governing, a new way of living, I think, once she's finished her business.
Absolutely. She's bringing in the new. And the thing is, it's something we haven't experienced before, because the one thing that's definitely coming to light is the fact that those who battled against the change, right? There was a matriarchy, and then there was a patriarchy, right? So both sides had their turns and tried to, and of course, that's more complex than just saying men.
Of course, yeah.
But it's a way of doing things. Let's put it this way, right?
I actually see Eris as a very androgynous figure, actually.
Right, as many of them are, because it's not about whether you're male or female. It's about how you approach things. So let's say the maternal approach is more enriching and loving and wanting people to become leaders. The paternal approach is more, I'm going to squash you. I want you to work for me. I want to hook into your energy so you'll do whatever I want, because all the money or whatever it is must flow to a certain place. So the first battle that we're looking at now, the battle in the past, was done by force, right? But now we have the intelligence. We don't need to do things by force anymore. We need to be intelligent enough to focus on what is true for us without wasting a lot of time trying to persuade others.
Exactly.
And I think we have talked about this. And what's so interesting about all the twos, because 2 is about not only reminding us of the polarity, it's also about the balance. Like when we go, what do I need to create and who can help me create this, as opposed to what do I need to destroy, except for what we were talking about, destroying the stuff that's in our way, right? That's stopping us from stepping out. But we don't need to destroy what other people are doing, because they'll do that. Right?
Yeah, indeed. Yep. So Pallas Athena as well and Juno, asteroids, are also in aspect to all of this. They're at 19, Pallas Athena is at 19 Scorpio and Juno at 21 Virgo on the full moon. So they're straddling the 20-degree mark, so very close to it. And also in aspect to that Pluto. Everything is in aspect to Pluto on this. And they're very much, again, about the Juno, the rights of oppressed, particularly, women and children, abused women and children. Pallas Athena is strategy. But she's also the sphere of justice, and in Scorpio, which is Pluto ruled, I think there's going to be right now we've got the climate strike going on all week as we record, and and you know, these young people speaking to the UN and with great power. And I don't want to get into the whole climate debate argument. I have people keep telling me it's the elites are using Greta Thunberg and all these things. It's like, yes, it's crazy.
My argument about all this, and I personally, I think there are so many things we could look at and say this is the most important. But the truth is, it really doesn't matter what the subject material is. What matters is the process. We have to look beyond somebody using, because even as you may be using someone, they are using you, because that's a relationship. It's always about the relationship. What's happening is what has been the standard bearer is being questioned and being held to this authority. So if you think you want to, you know, what's the word, play with your lips and come up with stuff, you're still going to go under, because we're in a space of integrity. So whatever is out of integrity is going to, you know, be swallowed by disease and illness, and at some point, maybe not in our lifetimes, but it certainly will be. And this is the way it happens, is by something new coming in and defying and questioning the old, which is what we're seeing.
And these voices, you know, there's Juno and Pallas Athena, they are shifting perceptions no matter what the outcome of your investigation is.
And that's brilliant, because we also talked about all the female kind of outer female energies are preparing, or at that place where they are ready to kind of surround what we might call traditional, right? We have the Lilith, we have Juno, Ceres. Look, they're all in that range around there, right? Aries. They're all like preparing, like you can see they've taken a position. If this was the battle plan, they're all taking a position. And then when we look at the nodes, you and I talked about that. Well, you probably mentioned that the nodes were on at 22 degrees. The new moon
in April, yeah.
And now they're at 12, and this is highly significant because we are in a 12 year, and 12 is all about moving out of victimization into that total expression that we've talked about from the beginning, that idea of just, you know, letting it show who you are. And we can look at that Greta, I forget now. Thunberg. She's letting people, like, she's very kind of serious, and she's letting that show. She's not hiding it. She's not pretending, oh, I'm just a little girl. I don't understand what's going on. She's just out there. This is who I am. This is what I'm presenting to you. You know, it's kind of like a Joan Arc thing, right? And that's who all of these, it's like there's layers. These are intelligent beings with a plan. Regardless of what happens, it is going to change things. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And they're very Eris-like voices.
Yeah.
So, and there's Eris conjunct that moon on the full moon, and a full moon is always kind of a fulfillment and release too. So I think those voices are going to get more powerful. And then when they start squaring Pluto as well, oh my goodness. So I want to look at the chart again. Oh, Lilith, Black Moon Lilith also is at 19 degrees. So she's at the same degree mark as Pallas Athena, and she's in Pisces, and she's Black Moon Lilith has a very erratic orb. So in other words, she appears to be retrograde a lot and moves very quickly back and forth. And she's going back and forth over Neptune for a while, and then into Aries, where the full moon is itself. And she's really the very wild part of ourselves, but she's also connected with shame and where we've felt shame, where we've been shamed. And you know, if you I think about my upbringing. I can only speak for myself, of course, and the culture I was brought up with. But there was a lot of shame in it, really. You know, shame for being outspoken, shame for not following the rules, shame for you know, not fitting in this nice, neat little patriarchal box. And I never did fit in them. I'm not saying I felt lots of shame, but there was lots of shame in the atmosphere about it. You know, you were shameful if you didn't do this. And Lilith is representing a big part of that coming up as she hovers back and forth over Neptune. And Neptune dissolves and kind of gradually erases a lot of these things. So a lot of this shamefulness we may have been brought up amongst for just being who we are, completely creative, self-expression, liberated, in the society we were born into, is being just dissolved and erased. So it no longer kind of rules our world, if you like. So that's another lovely wriggle of this chart.
Indeed. Just remembering with all of the stuff, what's happening, there will be stuff rising to the surface. So it's not like when we talk about it, it's not like, oh, boom, everything's gone. You know, here's my sword, it's all gone. We are going to be in the muck of this stuff. As it rises, we will feel the contamination of this. However, if you just hang in and realize and remind yourself, this is how we clear it, by allowing it to rise through us and to look at the things people have done because they have been shamed for whatever reason, and used it against people, because it's part of keeping secrets, right? Shame is like, let's not tell anyone what's happening at home while people are being abused and all of these things. So we need to be able to see this in the light so we can have compassion for it. So we can go, yes, I understand why this happened. I may not agree with it, but I can see why. So I can release my resentment around it, you know, because that's can also keep us stuck when we're resentful about things that happen. We want to bring it in the open. We want to confront people if we need to, or maybe whatever it is we need to do, but we need to know that that's part of the process.
And some of this muck is being brought to the fore by our beloved leaders. You know, as Jen was talking about that, you know, I think we've got leaders in the president in the US and the prime minister in the UK and in the one in Australia and many of them around the world at the moment. They're being driven by awful upbringing and horrible feelings of shame and abuse, really, to be quite honest. I think that doesn't make them wonderful people, but you can have compassion for them still, because they were brought up under horrible conditions, really, emotionally, you know.
And but the bigger picture of that is our society allowed it, right?
Oh yeah.
We allowed people to behave badly because they had a bad upbringing. And that's the thing that we have to now go, I have compassion, but you still have to fall in line.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's the difference. That we can only do that when we can see.
But I also think they're examples of it to us. Is what I'm
totally.
saying. That's my point. Yeah,
Right.
not excusing them at all.
I didn't think you were excusing them. I'm saying this. The next step is realizing that we as a society, that's part of the poison, is that we've allowed these things to happen. So it's not a matter of blaming anyone or shaming anyone. It's just like, that's the reality of what's been going on, and how do we fix it, or how do we dissolve it, like. And that's the dance of Pluto and Neptune and Lilith, is that idea of changing our spiritual makeup, really.
It is. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, so was there anything else we wanted to say about the chart? This is going to perhaps be a little bit quicker than our normal ones, because we've both got so much going on.
I know. I just have one kind of thing I just noticed. Well, actually, I did want to mention Chiron because it's a 2. And I think that there is a connection there between Chiron at 2 and the 20s, because it's still a 2, right? And so there's another part of that healing aspect that Chiron holds, which is to swallow the poison and be healed from inside. Like, how do you heal? And this is a lot of what we're talking about, is that's how we have compassion, is when we realize the part we've played in the bigger picture and what we've allowed to happen. And again, it's not about blame, it's about recognizing and going, okay, that will move the needle. My understanding moves the needle and opens my heart. And two, like everything is a partnership, right? Like all relationships are partnerships. So I think this is what this is all about, is how are we relating to each other? How are we relating to ourselves, to our souls, to what we desire, and coming clean around that.
I just realised I did want to mention Ceres too, because she is pretty rapidly now anyway, approaching a conjunction with Jupiter in Sagittarius. And they're interestingly, talking of twos, Jupiter and Ceres are exactly 2 degrees apart on this full moon. So there's another two. But Ceres is, we've talked about her before. She's, Demeter, the mother of Persephone, who was stolen by Pluto and taken to the underworld. But she represents astrologically the cycles of nature, about learning the old, more aligned ways of being in harmony with the cycles of nature and the seasons. But she also represents grief and forgiveness. And coming up to Jupiter in Sagittarius with the emphasis on truth and freedom, there's a big element there of the necessity to allow the grief for, it's like when a person dies, when a part of the past dies, you're allowed to grieve it for a while, grieve what might have been, what was, what happened, and then try and move into a place of forgiveness. And I do think the two of them coming together is going to allow a big kind of wave of release and letting go and forgiveness when they start their new cycle, which I can't remember exactly what date, but they're very close to it on this full moon. It's later in the month, in October. A new cycle of, saying, okay, all this stuff has kind of come up in the muck, as Jen said. But, we have to be able to release and forgive and grieve it to be able to move forward. Doesn't mean it's gone forever. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It just means that it's no longer sitting in you like it may have been for a long time. So.
Right. It's no longer activated in you. So it's like anything that's activated in you, good or bad, is a form of poison that gets you to do things. And so realizing that being activated by hatred and anger, while it's useful in the short term, it's not really, it's going to distract you from what you really desire. Revenge is not it has worked for people, but it's not a very effective long-term method. And just before we close up, I did also want to mention, I just noticed that Mars and Venus, talking about pairs.
They're both at 6. Yeah.
And so one in Libra, which is Mars.
Well, they're in a mutual reception, aren't they? Because Venus rules Libra and Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio.
Right. So isn't that interesting, talking about understanding one another? 6 is the number of love and partnership, and really, accepting who your partner is. And
they are the anima and animus within you as well.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty significant right there, just looking at that and thinking about how do you establish some of the things we're talking about, new ways of being with people you love, new ways of being with the society you live in, with the loving, as we were saying, the mutual reception, like what works for us both is a lot better of a plan than, but first, of course, we have to know who we are and what we want before we go giving away things.
Well, yeah. So it's about the relationship with the self first,
right,
and then everybody else. So, quite excited again about this full moon. Being an astrologer, a lot of astrologers are like, "Oh my God, this build up in Capricorn in January." Well, it's going to be intense and interesting, but I kind of find it exciting because I think it's beyond time for this big shift. So.
Having an extraordinary experience.
Yes,
this is the thing, is to remember, even if it hurts, even if it's uncomfortable and painful and not what we expected, which I'm sure it will be, lots of things, when we talk about death and dying, there will be things that we still enjoy and want that will die. And it'll be horrible. We can grieve, but that's the process. The process of getting to new or to choose the things we desire is to allow what needs to die to die. I always find
it might not all be horrible, by the way.
Right. Fantastic. I mean, it's just about enjoying the fact that you know this is something that is going to bring up all kinds of emotion in you, bringing you alive. Just because you don't enjoy every second doesn't mean you're not alive. Like, that's it. You're feeling your feelings. You're feeling the joy, the whatever it is, the shock and awe of being alive. And
it kind of cracks me up these days because I'm very honest in my blogs when my articles all the time I write when I feel very emotional, and I'm very honest about it, and I'm okay with it. I enjoy it. I enjoy the days where I feel like everything's like really sad,
Exactly.
Because it's part of being alive. And I always get all these messages afterwards going, "Are you okay?" I'm going, "Yes, better than."
Right. I mean, that's the true desire we have, right? Is to feel the challenge of something that is not all the same. It's not on the comfy couch. Oh, I have a feeling, I have an experience, and how do I want to live through it? It is bloody exciting.
It is.
And it's amazing that we can experience these things and go, oh my God, I'm having this amazing experience.
Even if it's a not great one.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still an experience. Anyway, let's move on to the symbols. I'm going to read mine first this month, I think.
Yes.
Okay, so the Chandra symbol for Aries 21, because we always go up a degree, is pastel flag, or pastel, as they say here, flags fluttering in the breeze, calling attention to yourself, making a show of things, demonstrating a path to follow, strongly urging that others move in the directions you are initiating, persuasive, insistent, reiterative, playful and twinkling on the outside, but entirely intent on the inside, pushing and pulling for optimal outcomes, eloquent, ideological. You tend to be fanatical or zealous, pressing outwards, far outwards, identified with a style, a sensibility, a progressive evolutionary wave. You are sharply on the spot of pivotal changes, pulling the collective attention to what comes next on the horizon. Greatly gifted with talents of transmission, nothing else distracts you from the leitmotif of making the new attractive and sparking encouragement, empowerment, and destiny momentum with elan and utter dedication. Oh, I love that.
Yes.
It just means leading the way, inspiring people. It reminds me of this girl again, in the card, reaching up in the flame and utter abandon. So sure that, she's going in the right direction, kind of thing. But follow others to follow if they choose. Yeah.
Right, and I think it speaks to a lot of what we were talking about. It's the inner fire of what is true and what is this absolute joy in this incredible experience we're having.
Yeah.
That focus you and just moving away from what contaminates you or stops you from being fully expressed.
Yeah.
All right. So with the Sabian symbol, I don't know, I have two books here. I think they have similar things.
The symbol should be about the same. Some of them reworded them slightly. But...
All right, well, I'm going to read this one.
Which book?
It's, I don't know, it's Oracle, Sabian symbol, Oracle.
Oh, I don't know that book. Who's that by?
Linda Hill and
Oh, it's Linda Hill's. Okay, yeah.
Is that a good one?
Yeah, it is. Yes, just different.
I think it's very similar to the other one, which is.
Well, the symbols were channeled. It's just the interpretations that are slightly different.
All right. Well, let's see what it says. A pugilist. Did I say pugilist? Which
Pugilist.
is a fighter entering the ring. It may be time to fight, but it needs to be with dignity and regulation. There are rules to follow, and it's often others who will be the judge of the outcome. Make sure you have the skills and the training to have earned the right to defend what you believe. Remember that sometimes you need to back off if you're not winning the contest. Physical or psychological self-assertion and determination. Is this a situation of attack or defense? Be prepared to fight for one's emotional, psychological, or physical space. If negative, using power to dominate people or those who challenge you. Right. So I think it's actually does kind of speak to the same idea. That, right. We get to decide what's worth fighting for and how are we going to fight for it.
And it's kind of stepping into your own power. It's not really fighting against things. It's it's the potency really of really stepping into your own power and that's how it reads to me anyway.
Right. Well, here I'm just going to read a line here from the other one, because it says this is the symbol of a complete lack of personal sensitiveness. Right. So it's the raw elements of experience, primarily on the side of self-realization, as man exhibits full confidence in his own powers and seeks the support of that audience. The world will always provide for the spectacle when anyone is willing to risk his major fruits of achievement. Implicit in this symbolism is a need to be up and at the business of life. The key word is exertion. So I think that kind of explains it better. I think that I didn't really like the wording on the first one. It's kind of old-fashioned.
Yeah, I know. It's not my favorite book, but
yeah. Right. The other one, the Mark Edmund Jones, I think they gave a better thing, a better interpretation of what we were talking about.
But with all these symbols, and with both of them, the Chandra and the Sabian, they are to be interpreted for the self too. It's just think of the words and take what they mean for you. They have a feel to them, but don't take them literally. They are to inspire thought and motivation for you, the symbols. So
right, as we talked about, each of us has our own interpretation of what we consider the truth, and so we need to interpret.
Yeah, exactly. All righty. So Jen, do you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at my website, jendushen.com. I'm also, you can Google me. I'm all over. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, other places. If you are interested in the cards, they're on my website, jendushen.com/illuminating journey cards. I do have a group on Facebook and a page. Yeah, I do teaching, and I have a type of membership thing, Soul Pillar Salon, which is also on my website.
Okay, and I'm Louise Eddington. My website's louiseeddington.com. There's links to all my stuff on the homepage there and the Work With Me page, including I have a membership site with different levels of membership, and depending on what kind of support you're looking for, whether it's just to read all my writing in full. I have a Facebook group, Planetary Magic Cafe, which may be going away. I feel things, this card, I go back to it and I am just focusing in the zone of what brings me most joy and creative self-expression, and some things, their time is out. So yes, my book available on Audible now. So I know a lot of people have Audible membership. So if you have a credit, get yourself my book and listen to astrology on audio. And I'm on Instagram too, Louise Eddington. Follow me on Facebook, Louise Eddington. The Facebook page, Louise Eddington Astrologer. Just Google my name.
That's right.
And I do classes sometimes. My next class is going to be in the late spring, my celebrated Venus retrograde class. I'll be talking more about that as we get closer to it. So, all righty. So I think that's it. Did I forget anything? Send your questions to weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com. Any questions welcome. We won't give out personal details on air. Okay, so if that's it, it's goodbye from Louise.
And goodbye from Jen.